Discover this grandma's incredible journey. 5 unexpected steps to motivation and healing. Carol stood in her small living room, the air thick with memories of laughter and love, and yet, it felt like a hollowed-out shell of her former life. The cushions on the couch still bore the impressions of shared moments, but the silence that engulfed her now rang louder than any memory. Since her husband's passing, each corner of the house was a trapdoor to another memory: his worn slippers by the door, his favorite mug still nestled in its cabinet, untouched. The shadows of grief wrapped around her, smothering her spirit as she wrestled with the ache of solitude. Cleaning out the cedar chest provided a sense of purpose, a small distraction from the crushing loneliness. As she dug past cherished mementos, her dizzying journey through dusty photographs led her to his journal's hidden treasures saturated with dreams of an artist's life. With trembling hands, she opened the first page, despair mixing with a flicker of hope. His longing to pick up a brush, to paint the worlds trapped in his imagination, ignited the embers of long-forgotten dreams within her. A rush of determination washed over her, magnifying her sorrow. She had always supported him. Now it was her turn, yet could she carry the weight of creativity alone? Before she could fully grasp the implications, doubt seeped in. All the conversations about losses and missed opportunities clouded her mind. Questions swirled. Would pursuing artistic dreams make her a traitor to his memory, or perhaps transform the shadows swallowing her? An unfamiliar resolve lingered, but it was suffocated by the sting of criticism from others. Someone your age should leave art to the young. Mia's mocking tone echoed in her ear, slicing through her tentative self-worth as she envisioned it, a reminder that the world had little space for a grandmother wielding a paintbrush. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Carol fought through the sting of Mia's words, channeling that energy onto her canvas. Each color she splashed reflected a battle: the vibrant yellows of a morning sun she used to share with him, the deep blues of twilight that reminded her of quiet dinners discussing their children. As her skills blossomed, a joyful spark intertwined with the shadows of sorrow that lingered, creating a complex tapestry of emotions. Yet with every brushstroke came guilt. Her responsibilities as a grandmother tugged at her. Every moment spent in pursuit of art felt like stealing time from her grandchildren, who looked up to her with wide, hopeful eyes. All of it doubt, determination, guilt built within her like a storm. The climax of her struggle loomed ahead. A stark confrontation at the local art showcase where she prepared to unveil her journey, her truth. The weight of the upcoming moment filled the air with electric tension. As she stepped into the spotlight, Mia's scornful smirk met her gaze, deepening her insecurities. Heart racing, Carol steadied herself against the pull of retreat, torn between standing her ground and the faint whisper of lingering self-doubt. Every inch of her being determined to reclaim her husband's legacy, bridging the silence with vibrant bursts of expression that told their story, a story that needed to be shared. What would happen when she breathed in deep, facing the crowd, ready to reveal her heart? As anticipation hung thick in that moment, the stakes were clear. This was her life's journey on the canvas, and so much more than that. Would she rise to the challenge or let the shadows swallow her whole once again? The spotlight felt like a burning spotlight upon Carol, an all-consuming presence that demanded her courage yet seemed to amplify her insecurities. Her heart pounded louder than the murmur of the anxious crowd. Each pulse reverberated through her body like a reminder of everything she had endured. Standing on the precipice, lips dry, palms clammy, she gripped her paintbrush like a lifeline. Sucking in a breath, she forced herself not to look at Mia. Instead, she focused on the canvas before her, a vibrant explosion of colors that narrated her journey, one filled with love, loss, and rediscovery. This artwork represented more than just paint. It illustrated a reclamation of self, a gift to both herself and her departed husband, who had dreamed of expressing the very essence of living. He had longed for artistic freedom, and now she could carry his light forward. That as she began to speak, her voice quivered at first, betraying the powerful torrent of emotions beneath. But with each word, like each brushstroke, she gained strength. I used to think art wasn't for someone like me, she declared, the honesty resonating through the room, pulling listeners closer. But in the remnants of our shared dreams, I found the courage to wield this brush, to embrace what makes us human, our longing, our passion, and yes, even our grief. Encouraging murmurs came from the audience, nudging her confidence further. With every heartbeat, she confronted her recollections and doubts. She recalled Mia's mocking comment. Yes, her age may elicit judgment, but it did not determine her value. The challenge forming in her mind was clear. It was one of defiance, a refusal to succumb to societal expectations that marginalized her existence. Carol began to see her true self shimmering through the colors of the paint. She was not a cliché, nor was she too old to dream. Unearthing her vulnerability felt liberating. As she flowed into the narrative of her art, it became a powerful medium of healing, not only for herself but also for the audience. With each layer of paint, she was sharing pieces of herself, pulling back the curtain on the complexities of her emotions. The dilemma of pursuing her passion in the twilight of her life was momentarily eclipsed by commitment to this expression of love, a love that refused to expire with loss. Yet as the session drew closer to its end, the shadow of skepticism loomed again. What would happen when the applause faded? What if this was just a fleeting moment, and the doubts inevitably returned? The anxiety crept back in her consciousness, wrapping around her like the familiar shadows of grief. She could still hear voices echoing in her mind, asserting she wasn't enough, that she was chasing illusions. The realization struck hard, a constant tug-of-war between embracing her newfound purpose and the crippling fear of returning to obscurity. Noticing the crowd's engagement, her resolve began to shift. Perhaps this was not merely an act of proving herself but also a call to share her story, a testament to the resilience hidden within. With that understanding, her internal chaos began to quiet, giving way to clarity. Embracing her passion was equally about honoring her late husband, as it was about reclaiming her own identity. The paradox of her existence, the interplay of loss and discovery, could now fuel her journey. As she stepped back from the canvas, radiant colors transformed the sharp edges of doubt, weaving them into a new narrative. When the audience rose to their feet, applauding her work and bravery, for the first time, she felt the rush of impending freedom within the confines of vulnerability. Yet uncertainty lurked just beneath the surface, whispering that this journey was far from complete. The whispers of Mia and the other naysayers still danced around her like a persistent echo. What would she do when faced with their skepticism again? The question loomed, challenging her resolve. Would she continue to paint through the shadows, creating her own narrative, or would she allow the silence to creep back, dulling her spirit? Once more, as the last of the applause faded, leaving only a faint echo, Carol's thoughts spiraled into a tempest of uncertainty. The audience had embraced her, but what did that truly mean? Had she merely succeeded in captivating them momentarily, or had she touched something deeper, something lasting? Determined to seize this rare moment of clarity, she stepped away from the canvas and retreated to the quietness of her studio, a sanctuary lined with her artworks and sketches. The room smelled of linseed oil and fresh paint, yet there was an underlying aroma of possibility, a reminder that every brushstroke had the power to transform. As she surveyed the space that had witnessed her evolution, she felt an electrifying thrill paired with a pervasive self-doubt. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by her painted stories, Carol dug deep into her psyche. What if this journey wasn't just about her creative expression? What if it could propel her into the realm of mentoring others? The realization was like a flash of lightning. She had the potential to unlock the doors of expression for those who, like her, had suppressed their voices beneath layers of fear. But who would listen? The echoing voice of skepticism quickly surged forward, urging her to remember Mia and the unkind words that had formed a shroud around her self-confidence. Carol could feel the pressure rising. The thought of confrontation with Mia lingered like a festering wound. Would she face disparagement again? Yet another voice interjected, one that had emerged from the very depths of her resolve during her presentation. This voice gently punctured through the fog of negativity. Empowerment was a choice, and so too was the decision to forge ahead. What if she could turn her experiences into a workshop? A safe space where women of all ages could come together to paint, express, and heal. Inspired, she jotted down ideas for a curriculum. Together with her art, She envisioned offering sessions on emotional healing through creativity, perhaps starting with stories, building trust, and culminating in powerful art pieces expressing their collective journey. The thought sent a surge of energy through her veins that in that moment, she felt the familiar gravitational pull of fear and doubt, but this time it was different. Instead of yielding to a retreat, she felt an assertive instinct building within, anchoring her. If she could vocalize her struggles, surely she could encourage others to do the same. She navigated through a multitude of feelings: elation, fear, determination, vulnerability. Each emotion clashed against the other, creating a complicated tapestry of resolution. She realized what Mia represented: the challenge to confront not just external negativity, but to tackle her internal self-criticism as well. With conviction burning in her chest, she stood and walked briskly to the easel, determined to channel this surge of inspiration into paint. Each stroke expressed defiance against doubt, and embraced her unique narrative, a tapestry of renewed purpose and empowerment. As day turned to dusk, Carol admired her work. Vibrant colors pulsed across the canvas, symbolizing the journey she had undertaken and the path that lay ahead. Her heart raced at the thought of actually stepping out to invite others to join her creative revival. But the shadows persisted. Could she truly lead a group? What if she didn't know how? The ideal plan crystallized in her mind, yet uncertainty clung heavily to the edges, teasing her potential retreat. The time had come to face her ghosts, but could she break free from their haunting shadows? What lay beyond the practice of art? And could she truly claim the role of leader, of mentor? The questions left her breathless, their weight seemingly insurmountable, urging her to confront the greatest challenge of all, herself. Each day unfolded like a blank canvas, an opportunity for Carol to practice painting her new life not just in vivid colors but with purposeful strokes. The exhilaration she felt during her presentation lingered, propelling her toward a bold commitment to mentor others. Yet despite this newfound intention, she was acutely aware that tradition didn't readily yield to change, especially not her own deeply ingrained habits. The logical start to any endeavor was a plan. Carol found herself sketching outlines for her workshop on the back of old receipts. She hesitated, recalling the doubts that swirled within her mind like an uninvited guest. Would anyone take her seriously? What credentials did she have beyond her experiences? Each question thudded in her chest, a reminder that self-doubt still lurked close by. Determined, she drew a deep breath and picked up her phone. The local community center would be the perfect venue, brimming with the kind of souls she wanted to reach. They were not just participants, they were people looking to rediscover their own voices, much like she had. The thought infused her with warmth and resolve. With trembling fingers, she dialed the number. The voice that answered was patient, and Carol found herself explaining her vision. As she spoke, doubt began to relinquish its grip. The enthusiasm in her words punctured through her insecurities. By the end of the call, she had booked a space for her first workshop, the first tangible step toward a reality that had previously felt impossibly far gone. Returning to her easel that evening, Carol felt a shift. She slashed the canvas with bold strokes, channeling the fear and triumph that intertwined within her. The colors danced vibrantly, echoing her internal renaissance. But celebration was short-lived. It would be a week before the workshop, and each passing moment saw her mind race through scenarios that left her breathless. What if nobody showed up? What if they laughed at her ideas? The creeping specter of Mia's derision flickered in her thoughts, igniting a familiar fire of self-doubt. Yet in the quiet hours of the night, another voice, a whisper of wisdom, intervened. This was not about validation from others but about creating a space for authentic expression. Facing possible rejection became a crucial element of her own personal growth. If she could bear the weight of vulnerability in front of her future students, perhaps they could uncover their own truths. Carol found herself drafting an affirmation for every doubt that clawed its way into her mind. With each line, she became her own advocate, replacing fear with declarations of capability and resilience. She was a guide, not just an artist. The morning of the workshop dawned, and anticipation mixed with anxiety coiled within her belly. As she gathered supplies, she glanced at her canvases, each piece a testament to her journey, a reminder that she had traversed darker corridors and emerged, colors intact. Arriving at the center, she was greeted by empty chairs. The silence rang in her ears as she set up her easel and materials, the stillness brimming with potential. Would they come? Each tick of the clock intensified her tension as the first woman walked through the door, slightly hesitant but smiling. Excitement surged. One by one they arrived, a blend of anticipation and uncertainty mirrored in their expressions. Carol understood their fears. They reflected her own journey. "Welcome," she began, her voice steadying with each word. "Let us find our stories together." With that, she crossed over an invisible threshold, embracing the uncertainty but also the possibility of profound connection, both for herself and for those eager to express their truths. But just as the class began to unravel in creative chaos, a familiar face stood at the door. It was Mia, her expression unreadable, a jarring reminder of past echoes. The moment tightened around Carol like a noose, leaving her torn between her newfound purpose and the specter of her past. Could she really teach others to stand tall when she felt like she was still wading through her own unresolved pain? As Mia stepped forward, Carol took a deep breath, ready to confront the shadow that had lingered too long. Would this be the moment that defined her, not just as an artist but as a leader? As Mia stepped further into the room, tension crackled in the air. Carol's heart thundered against her chest, the familiar pull of insecurity clawing at her. This was not just any critique. This was a remnant of her past, poised to challenge the very foundation of the progress she had forged. Mia's fixed gaze felt like an interrogation. Carol swallowed hard, aware of her own resolve wavering beneath the weight of memories, moments laced with criticisms that had once paralyzed her. Yet here she stood, no longer just a participant in her own narrative, but the protagonist bravely rewriting her story. "Are you here to see what all the hype is about?" Carol asked, forcing a smile that barely masked her discomfort. Her voice, apologetically strong, surprised even her. Mia arched an eyebrow, communication crackling between them like static electricity. "I wanted to see if you could actually pull this off. After all, you were never one for leading," she replied, her tone dripping with skepticism. Carol's gut twisted with the sting of those words, but rather than succumb to the familiar web of doubt, she squared her shoulders, taking a deep breath. "I've decided to be more than what anyone expects, including myself." The statement surprised her, but it was a realization that radiated from a newfound inner core. The workshop continued around them, and as the women began mingling and expressing themselves, Carol felt a shift. The air filled with laughter, the sounds of paintbrushes splattering colors onto canvases, and the soft murmur of encouragement resonated against her fears. Maybe this was what she had set out to create, a space not just for sharing skills, but for cultivating resilience. Mia looked on silently at the unfolding creativity, her arms crossed. It was a defensive posture, but Carol sensed cracks in her facade. As one participant struggled with frustration, Carol approached, kneeling beside her. "It's okay. This is about exploration, not perfection. What does this color mean to you?" The woman's face softened, vulnerability blooming as she spoke. "I feel lost and I'm not sure how to get it right," she admitted, tears glistening in her eyes. "Lost is just another way of saying you're on the brink of discovery," Carol replied, her voice steady, each word anchoring her in purpose. She could feel the warmth of understanding washing over them. "Let us embrace it together." Mia shifted her weight, perhaps contemplating her own past experiences in light of Carol's evolving courage. The tension between them began to dissolve, the workshop siphoning a transformative energy that Carol had only dared to dream of. Midway through the session, encouragement erupted around the room. Unexpectedly, Mia approached Carol nearly shyly, stealing her breath. "I didn't think you'd be able to manage all this," she admitted. The admission echoed in the space, raw and unguarded. "I'm not managing it alone," Carol replied, unwavering. "We're all finding our voices together." The revelation echoed back to her, a strength rising not merely in solitude, but in solidarity with those she aimed to help. As the workshop progressed, exhilaration melded with a deep-rooted belief in what they were building. Carol recognized that she wasn't just teaching artistry. She was igniting self-belief. The realization sparked new possibilities within her. What if this was just the beginning? When the final brushstroke was applied and the last story shared, applause erupted. Emotion splashed across faces and Carol's heart soared. The energy shifted, transforming fear into exhilaration. Mia was still there, observing, but now with an expression that hinted at curiosity instead of cynicism. As the session wrapped, Carol caught Mia's eye, her own determination unyielding. "Thank you for coming. I hope this workshop gave you something to think about." With that, Carol took a step back, embracing the weight of the moment. She could feel the ground solidify beneath her. Yet, as Mia turned to leave, her expression twisted back to something unreadable. "It's not over, Carol," she said quietly before vanishing into the crowd. The comment lingered ominously, planting a seed of uncertainty and the promise of growth. Just when Carol thought she had reconciled her past, it seemed the confrontation had only just begun. What could Mia mean by that? The moment of truth was approaching. Carol's resolve would soon be tested in ways she hadn't anticipated. The path forward illuminated by both hope and unknowing shadows. As Carol lingered in the aftermath of the workshop, the applause reverberated in her ears like an echo of her own triumph. Yet the unexpected weight of Mia's parting words gnawed at her thoughts. The room was alive with joy, yet within her a storm brewed. It was a peculiar juxtaposition. The exhilaration of the participants stood in stark contrast to the confusion that coursed through her. What was it about Mia's comment that unsettled her so? She had taken a bold step, leading the workshop, but Mia's presence, her skepticism, reminded Carol of the shadows that often flickered at the edges of her newfound confidence. Each brushstroke shared by her attendees symbolized something far more profound than paint on canvas. It was an unveiling of the self, a shedding of layers she had once been too afraid to confront. But there was still a part of Carol that questioned her own worthiness to remain in this space she had claimed. As she assisted the final participants with their paintings, she forced herself to breathe deeply, the aroma of fresh paint mingling with the undercurrents of self-doubt. "You did great today, Carol," one participant exclaimed, her face flushed with excitement. The praise felt good, but beneath it lurked a bothersome whisper of disbelief. "Thank you," she responded, her smile feeling slightly strained. "It was a beautiful experience for all of us." In that moment, every compliment felt like a challenge, each exclamation stoking a fear that she might soon be exposed as a fraud. Was she really making a difference, or merely distracting herself from the reality that still loomed over her? When the last canvas was laid down, and the room began to empty, Carol found herself alone, the sounds of laughter fading into silence. Her heart pounded, a reminder that the confrontation with her past wasn't just an abstract concept. It was breathing down her neck. She felt it beneath her skin. It was the challenge to rid herself of the shackles of expectation. Her phone buzzed, breaking the solitude. A message from Mia appeared. "We need to talk. Tomorrow 3 p.m. Don't brush me off." The need for confrontation surged in her core. Carol's hand trembled as she typed a response. "Okay." There was no room for retreat now. A ticking clock pressed against her resolve, amplifying the urgency. What could Mia want? Did she see through Carol's bravado, recognizing that the thread of her past still entangled her? With a mixture of fear and determination, Carol prepared herself for the inevitable meeting. It was time to confront the remnants of who she had been, the insecure artist forever fixated on approval, and to face the beliefs that tempted her to recoil. That as she walked through the now empty space, she envisioned the vibrant energy of the workshop. It had been a mosaic of voices, colors, and stories. Yet, the sunset behind the studio sparked a sense of solitude that crept in. It embellished her anxiety with clarity. This was the moment to solidify her development, to anchor herself into the future she desired. But what would the conversation with Mia unearth? In the quiet solitude of her emotions, Carol questioned how she would blend the lessons of resilience and strength gleaned from the workshop with memories that still haunted her. The weight of the past, once again, settled over her like a shadow, urging her toward confrontation. There was something to discover, a piece of herself yet unexplored through this impending dialogue. But could she break through and emerge stronger? At the heart of this confrontation lay not only her past, but the opportunity for growth and the possibility of forging her own future. The moment was close at hand, and with it, she could finally embrace the woman she aspired to be. Not just the artist but a leader in her own right. Tomorrow, facing the unpredictability of her past might illuminate truths buried beneath layers of doubt. And as Carol shut the door behind her, the grip of her uncertainties loosened, replaced with a simmering resolve. The real challenge awaited just around the corner. Would she rise to meet it or falter under its intensity? The stakes had never felt higher. The morning light spilled through the window, painting the studio in soft hues of orange and gold. Carol stood before the altar of creativity, a canvas in the center, brushes surrounding her like loyal companions. Yet today the colors felt muted, the paint tubes somewhat scattered. The thrill of the workshop's success had been eclipsed by a looming sense of unease. As the clock ticked closer to 3, each sound seemed to echo a reminder of her growing apprehension. She attempted to prepare her thoughts, rehearsing potential scripts in her mind, but the words tumbled around like errant paint splatters. Why was she so fixated on what Mia might say? It was almost comical that someone so seemingly insignificant in her life had gained this immense power over her emotions. As the minutes crept forward, Carol's resolve flickered like a candle fighting the breeze. She paced back and forth, replaying their last interaction, trying to dissect a meaning, a lament hidden among Mia's dismissive glances. Was it merely skepticism directed at her success, or an admonishment of Carol's own fears? In truth, it felt like both a persistent reminder of the doubt that lingered in the background, gnawing at the edges of the progress she had fought to establish. Pressure surged through her veins, the bubbling sensation of adrenaline mixed with self-doubt. Carol poured herself some water, desperately trying to ground herself in the mundane act of hydration. Each sip felt like attempting to swallow the weight in her gut, the impending conversation demanding clarity she couldn't quite conjure. She gazed at her reflection in the glass. Was this the determined artist she wanted to embody, or just a facade to mask her insecurities? Dissatisfied with her own image, Carol returned to her canvas, swiping a paintbrush across its surface, striking bold strokes as if attacking the doubts that consumed her. With every brush of color, she felt emboldened, allowing herself to channel the tumult of emotions surging within. Art had always been her solace, a refuge where the chaos subsided, if only for a moment. Yet today felt more profound. It was a confrontation with herself, each color, a symbol of her evolving identity. As she stepped back, glancing at her creation, the voice in her head shifted from ridicule to encouragement. This piece, half-finished and chaotic, was a testament to her journey. It spoke of tension and release, fear and exhilaration, a juxtaposition of old wounds against newfound joy. Through this painting lay her growth, her struggle. It was a vivid illustration of the resilience she desperately sought. The clock chimed, the time alarmingly solidifying the reality of her upcoming meeting. Yet there was a flicker of excitement mingling with her fear. What if Mia's words were not an attack but a mirror reflecting the depths of her insecurities, while also shedding light on the strength she now wielded? Despite her intense trepidation, Carol understood that this was the moment to further her personal development, not just as an artist, but as an individual navigating the complexities of her past. She felt a compulsion to redefine the narrative of her life, turning the fear into fuel instead of letting it paralyze her. Inhaling deeply, she stepped back from the canvas with a newfound sense of purpose. Carol was more than just a frightened artist. She was capable, courageous, and ready to face whatever storm awaited her. With every beat of her heart, she reminded herself she was here for a reason, to unearth the truth that lay buried beneath the wounds. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, that truth didn't terrify her. It excited her. As she gathered her thoughts, readying herself for the talk, she knew one thing for sure. Her evolution was unfolding, and Mia's confrontation would only serve to propel her further into the arena of her own making. The time had come to face not just Mia, but the perception of herself that had long kept her constrained. And just as resolve settled over her, a shiver coursed through her spine. The future she had avoided for so long was finally here, lurking just beyond the door. Would she be able to confront it, reshape it, or would it cast a shadow once again? The answer was closer than she thought, but now she needed to be ready for whatever revelations might emerge. As Carol composed herself for the meeting, an almost electric anticipation coursed through her veins. The door stood like an impenetrable boundary separating her from the confrontation that would determine the vivid contours of her self-perception. Beyond it lay not just Mia's judgments but a mirror reflecting the very essence of the artist she strived to become. How could something so small, a simple meeting, a casual interaction, carry the weight of her evolution? With deliberate movements, Carol tucked away the scattered brushes, clearing the space on her work table as if she were also clearing the mental debris in her mind. Each brushstroke had painted an essence of her journey, yet it was time to step into a different kind of canvas, the one where she could express herself verbally, without the solace of color to buffer her emotions. Speaking her truths could feel far riskier, but it also held the key to real liberation. Standing up straight, she steadied her breath, focusing on a single thought: growth emerges from discomfort. The mantra carried her own quiet resolve, like an anchor in turbulent seas. Carol mentally mapped out her approach, considering how to articulate her feelings about the workshop and the surpassing shadow of doubt Mia seemed to represent. This wasn't going to be a passive encounter. It was her chance to reclaim power over her narrative as she paced once more. The wind swept past the window, rustling the neatly arranged paint tubes. It was a clear sign, she thought, that change was imminent. Today, she whispered aloud, I choose clarity over chaos. Now it was time to step outside her bubble, and into the unease that had trapped her for too long. The thumping of her heart reverberated in her ears as she turned the knob and walked into the hallway. The walls, lined with brushstrokes and echoes of past art shows, felt like a reminder of the stakes. But rather than allowing that to congeal her fear, she focused on what lay ahead. Each step felt like a drumbeat, her footfalls a steady rhythm marking her intent. Meeting Mia brought with it an acute mix of excitement and anxiety. The woman radiated an air of self-assuredness that had always unnerved Carol. There she was, unapologetically powerful, an embodiment of the confidence Carol yearned to embody. But as Carol's gaze met Mia's vibrant, inquiring eyes, she clung to the belief that today, she would also showcase her own strength. Hi Mia, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Thanks for meeting me. Of course, Carol. I've been meaning to talk to you. Mia's tone had a blend of warmth and directness, providing a small cushion against the rising tension. Yet Carol felt her pulse quicken. She could sense the critical observations hovering just beneath the surface. As Mia initiated the conversation with a compliment about the workshop, Carol seized the moment. I wanted to address something that's been bothering me, she articulated, her heart racing. And I can't help but wonder, were you intentionally dismissive or was that just? Mia's expression shifted slightly, revealing flickers of surprise. The room hummed with the weight of Carol's question, kinks of tension rippling in the air. This was her moment, an opportunity to expose vulnerabilities, interject authenticity, and assert her place in the dialogue. The response from Mia would be pivotal. Would she deflect or engage? Would Carol sense understanding or disdain? As the seconds flashed by, trapped in this liminal space, Carol felt her confidence surging, blended with a palpable risk. The dialogue was no longer one-sided. She was unveiling herself, and just as their eyes locked, an unexpected question formed in Carol's mind. Was Mia a reflection of her fear? Or could she be a catalyst for growth? The answers were still murky, but for the first time Carol was poised to explore them. Mia's brows furrowed, a flicker of intrigue crossing her face. That's quite the question, Carol, she replied slowly, eyes narrowing as she assessed the gravity of the moment. The atmosphere thickened around them, a palpable tension laced with possibility. Carol's heart raced as she braced herself for a response that could either shatter her burgeoning resolve or bolster it. I never intended to dismiss you, Mia continued, her voice even. If anything, I may have inadvertently minimized your contribution. It's easy to overlook emerging voices in a room full of experience. The acknowledgement was a crucial pivot. For the first time, Carol sensed a crack in the impenetrable facade Mia had always supposed. Carol seized the opportunity. But that's just it, isn't it? You hold so much influence, and the moments when you don't listen can silence those of us still learning to speak. The words poured out, a cascade of pent-up sentiments finally manifesting. Each statement, punctuated with emotion, raw yet deliberate, began to construct a bridge between them. Mia leaned back, absorbing the weight of Carol's perspective. The defensiveness began dissipating into something more constructive. I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate your honesty. It can be tough to find one's voice, especially when surrounded by domineering personalities. In that instant, Carol recognized that this encounter could transform into a mutual exploration, rather than a confrontation. Exactly. I want to be part of the dialogue, not just an onlooker, Carol said, her voice steadier now, emboldened by the shared air of understanding. I can't grow my art without interaction, without feedback that matters. Then maybe it's time we collaborate more directly, Mia suggested, a glimmer of enthusiasm igniting in her eyes. We can structure the workshops around inclusivity. Maybe pair emerging and established artists together for feedback sessions to cultivate new voices, rather than just reinforcing established ones. Carol felt a warming current of inspiration surge through her. That sounds incredible, Mia. Maybe it starts with our next workshop. I could help design the format. The prospect brightened the hunt of self-doubt still clinging to Carol's thoughts. Let us do it, Mia said, a smile breaking the tension. But it's going to require work. Creating that space calls for patience and understanding from everyone involved. Understood, Carol replied with newfound determination. I'm in. The words felt like a verbal brushstroke on the canvas of her commitment to growth. In the conversation's wake, the two women delved deeper into details and logistics, the initial discomfort transforming into a collaborative energy that resonated within and around them. Each exchange of ideas swirled in the air. A new kind of color on Carol's palette, the vibrant hues of self-expression and assertiveness solidifying her identity. As the meeting drew to a close, Carol felt lighter, unshackled from the restraints of her previous fears. She had confronted and engaged in a potentially volatile discussion, but it had manifested something beautiful. Reflecting on her journey brought both clarity and renewed ambition. But just as the excitement settled, a thought emerged: had she truly asserted her voice? Or was there still more lurking in the shadows waiting to be unearthed? With a hesitant smile, she caught Mia's gaze one last time. About those feedback sessions, what if we partnered with other artists outside of our usual circles? The idea hovered, tantalizing in its implications, as the crux of her journey beckoned an uncharted territory. The unraveling potential loomed ahead, thick with unanswered questions and exhilarating prospects, compelling Carol to step into what lay beyond her current horizons. As days turned into weeks, and the warm light of spring seeped into Carol's studio, her heart burst with vibrant possibilities. The workshops blossomed beyond mere gatherings into dynamic spaces where art transcended the canvas and ignited voices long muted. Together with Mia, they orchestrated sessions that paired seasoned artists with newcomers, creating a symphony of creativity and encouragement. With each workshop, Carol felt herself evolving. No longer merely an artist defining herself through the prism of loss, she became a mentor, gently guiding others through the tangled brushstrokes of their emotions. The barriers within herself crumbled further as she witnessed participants flourish, reclaiming their narratives through color and form. She could hardly believe this was the same woman who once let skepticism choke her artistic expression. The workshop culminated in an exhibition filled with diverse artwork, a gallery pulsing with raw emotion and authenticity. As she stood before the vibrant tapestries of expression created by her participants, a wave of pride washed over her, a tangible acknowledgement that the journey had transformed not just her but a community of artists seeking their voices amidst their struggles. Validation flooded in as visitors admired the pieces, marveling at how they evoked feelings of resilience and freedom. Carol engaged in heartfelt conversations with attendees who shared how her mentorship had reignited their own passions. "Your belief in us made all the difference," one woman said, tearing up as she recounted her journey from despair to expression. The applause that echoed through the gallery was not merely for the art presented but for the community spirit that had blossomed, in affirmation of the importance of connection. The applause felt like a medal hanging around her neck, a symbol of a newfound recognition that she had long deserved. As the exhibition came to an end, Carol turned to Mia, her heart full after receiving unexpected yet impactful feedback. "We truly did this together," she said, realizing their initial rivalry had morphed into a collaborative celebration of creativity. "This means so much to me." Mia smiled, her once critical demeanor replaced with genuine admiration. "You have proven that age doesn't limit artistry but rather amplifies its richness. You've reclaimed your narrative, and that's powerful." Carol's heart hummed with fulfillment. In her 70 years, she had meticulously reconstructed her identity. She had gone from the shadows of grief to illuminating the world for others. Every brush stroke throughout her transformation reflected a profound personal achievement that resonated deeply within her soul. The art had become a mirror, a celebration of resilience, growth, freedom, and connection. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues onto her latest painting, a self-portrait that embodied the entirety of her journey, Carol realized she had not only embraced her identity as an artist but had evolved into a beacon for others navigating their complexities. It was an unmistakable testament that art had the power not just to heal but to empower. With newfound confidence, Carol made the resolution to continue expanding her workshops, reaching beyond her local community. She envisioned a touring program dedicated to empowering artists from all walks of life, fostering dialogues through creativity that tore down conventional barriers, much like those she defaced. At this moment, she stood not only as a creator, but as a leader fostering transformation. In reclaiming her husband's dreams and translating them into her own vibrant reality, her story burgeoned into something greater, a myriad of connections that could echo through generations. In her heart, she understood this was just the beginning. Now, dear viewer, this is where you need to take action. You need to subscribe now to catch all the exclusive emotional stories that fuel personal journeys like Carol's. This is the moment to show your support by clicking that like button. Do it now. What were your reactions? I want to hear every thought, theory, and emotion. Comment below and let's discuss. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of transformation. Together, let us build a community that celebrates personal growth.